do we have a crisis? Baldwin says it's simply power play, and there's an attempt to weaken one arm of the government.
Samson, it seems to me, just as it's been said about wars, in war, the first casualty is truth. Truth. It seems to me in the same way, in a political conflict, such as we have, the first casualty is being the truth. We are not getting the truth for either side. And that in itself is a crisis. So if the speaker says there is no political crisis, maybe he could be right. But the fact that, and this is what Ghanaians are saying, he says Parliament is alive and working, and we know that the Parliament has been shut down. So I don't know where the truth is. Look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritties of the nuances of law. We have able lawyers here who can deal with that. But I think we are being confronted with a situation that is unprecedented in our republic, where there's an open conflict. Maybe you can even say confrontation between the court, that's the judiciary, and Parliament. So far, the executive seems to be quiet. But whether we like it or not, it's part of it. The executive, because the Attorney General is also throwing some punches here and there. So there seems to be a very interesting development that we have never seen before. And I think it is important for our leaders to note that this is something we need to deal with and stop it as soon as possible. Look, we have a few weeks to go to elections and to change government. So to create this situation where Parliament is at loggerheads with the judiciary and vice versa, I think it's unwarranted. So my position on this is that no matter what it is not a matter of people sticking to the law here, even though that's what lawyers like to do, and I can respect that. But I think not all issues can be resolved legally. And you are all crack lawyers here. You know that. That's why we have what we call the alternative dispute resolution. The court created that exactly because of this. So this is a case that I think we have to seek that alternative resolution.
The speaker says, and as confirmed by the majority leader at the last time he adjourned indefinitely, the majority leader and his group had said that there was going to be some consultations.
Correct.
And that if the consultations did not yield results, they will then use the law to force the hand of the speaker to, as it were, call Parliament to sit. Forgive me. Now, the speaker comes out to say in the press conference that nobody, the majority, didn't reach him. I don't know. Was he also not supposed to reach, if it's consultation, must it be a one-way traffic? Now, because that happened, it was only the Council of State that reached out to him, and then he mentioned some clergymen who also reached out to him, and so on and so forth. Lack of consultation led to this situation. But he says, substantively, on the floor of the House, that they were ready to do business. And as always, the NDC was in the House. You need 92 of them to form a quorum to commence business. But you need at least half to be able to take a decision. The NPP, once again, was not in the House. But this time round, he said it's not because they were not in the chamber, but because there was no business paper which, outlines what has to be done. Agyemang-Duah replies him that when he filed for the requisition, he listed businesses that had to be done. So as far as he's concerned, that should constitute the business to be transacted. The reply he's getting from my minority group is that, but you didn't come to the House. You claim that you were in a business meeting, and the paper itself was by one side. It cannot constitute the business paper, because the business paper is a committee, including the minority, to formulate that. What do you think is going on?
A whole lot of things are going on. First of all, we are not getting the truth from either side. Secondly, I think they are a little bit oblivious of the fact that they hold a certain position in our political process that is critical to the process. And inadvertently, perhaps, they are not even aware that they are holding the whole country at ransom. Okay? So I think this issue of rebuttals and taking positions is exactly what is driving this. So you're right. If, in fact, the consultations had come on, and if, in fact, even the speaker or whoever had taken the liberty of approaching certain individuals quietly, I think this matter will have been resolved. Because it doesn't serve anybody's interest. I don't know what the politics they are playing, and I'm not going to get into whether they are seeking political advantage in this or not. Even if they are doing that, they must be aware that is the country's democracy that they are hurting. So I think the sensible thing to do, first, for each side to put any egos and whatever aside and begin to realize that the common interest of this country is to have a system that works. I am not suggesting by any stretch of the imagination that we should abort the rule of law by resorting to law to solve your case. No, I'm not suggesting that. But I think this is an issue that if we don't handle it properly can cause a real damage to our, not our concept, but our democracy.
Babin said this is not about egos. Even though he directly replies the CJ, and at a point he even made a comment that when, what's the name, Obama came talking about strong institutions and not strong men, says, well, thank God he didn't say strong woman. You know? He says what he wants to do is to ensure that we have strong institutions. Right. That Parliament is the portrait of the sovereign will of the people. He will not be the speaker who will allow other branches of government to weaken Parliament, because Parliament is the people's assembly and is the only branch that is supposed to hold the executive to check. Yeah, and he says a few other things. So it's not about egos. That's what he's saying.
Yeah, I'm not saying egos. I just said if it's ego that is holding them back, they should let it go so we can have a sensible conversation and resolve the matter. Look, the interpretation of the theory of checks and balances and balance of power has been done by many experts. Usually you don't get a conclusion on that. But common sense will tell you that while there is that separation, the checks and balances go either way. Mm-hmm. In fact, from the Constitution, and you guys can correct me, it seems to me that ultimately the Supreme Court will resort to resolve any differences we may have on the Constitution.
That's correct.
Good. So the Speaker certainly checks the executive. And the judiciary also has a way of checking the Parliament and the executive, so to speak, right? Because if the legislature passes any law, makes any ruling, that is seen by someone to have been a contradiction or is contrary to the Constitution.
He accuses the judiciary of interference.
Correct.
And he says it is interference because, on one leg, Agyemang-Duah went to court on the 14th, before the 15th when they had their first resumption sitting. So if he claims that the Speaker had done something and that's why he went to court, he's wrong, because the Speaker had not yet taken a step. And he says that the judiciary, the Supreme Court, should not have entertained that kind of, suit.
Look, over the past number of years, the Supreme Court has created an impression out there that has not been quite, is not been doing justice to all kinds of cases. We are aware of cases that have been sitting for years with the court. Okay, we know that. Even when the Supreme Court used the argument of representation as part of its decision, it's clear that that same court has sat on an issue that involves representation. I'm talking about the SAL issue. And these are the reasons why the latest, I guess the latest Mo Ibrahim report is indicating a 30% drop in the rule of law.
Judicial impartiality.
Impartiality in Ghana and other countries. So certainly, I think the Supreme Court has not been doing much to his own credibility over the past number of years.
That would be about the court, but not the Supreme Court.
Well,
when you talk about
court,
SAL.
I got it. It's
right.
about exactly the SAL. So at this point, that we are faced with this situation, where do we go? We still resort to the Supreme Court? Who resolve this? If there's a conflict between the judiciary and the legislature, who resolves it? I don't know. You are constitutional lawyers. In the Constitution, who resolves it? I don't know. So you tell me.
You've already said that. It is the Supreme Court.
Exactly.
So now hold on. Let's go to